Welcome back, Heat Seekers. We're back with the quarterback tiers for Week 7 to help you get ready and win the crazy Week 7. So in the QB1 overall tier, not really much of a surprise, quite honestly. These are all guys you're expecting to see up here. The one that stuck out to me as I was looking at him was Stafford, because I don't know. A lot of teams like to run up the score, but I don't know, with it being Detroit, if he's really going to run up the score. If they get ahead 2 or 3 scores, if they start to focus on the running. Looking at the QB1 overall, is there anyone here that you're, I don't want to say concerned, but anyone in this group that you would probably say may not be the strongest producer if you had to pick somebody?
Yeah, so they all have those matchups where you could conceivably see this happening.
Mhm.
With Hurts and Jackson, you certainly have that rushing upside. Murray to add in to their passing game that all three have had decent. Outside of Hurts, his passing numbers by and large aren't great. He is throwing a lot, and the yards, along with the rushing yards and some scores, I think would puts him in consideration here. I do think he does belong at the back end of this. From the rankings that the team had, he was clearly the sort of end of the QB1 overall to just the QB1 tier. I think that's where he belongs. You know the Lions better than I do. They're going to be up for this game, but I think Stafford's going to be up for this game, and I think they're going to want to put on a performance. So that's the way that I'm viewing it. I really like Matt Stafford this week personally, and just that whole offense going against your Lions.
Oh, yeah.
But all these matchups are good. Mahomes against Tennessee, Rodgers against Washington, Lamar against Cincinnati is probably actually the toughest out of them that we've seen as far as defenses that they're facing. And then Kyler against Houston. They should all have really nice days. But as we've seen, sometimes, like the Chargers last week, who are on bye, sometimes you're just going to get a dud, and you always run that risk.
So rounding out the rest of the quarterback one conversation, who's in the QB1 tier?
Yeah, we don't have very many here. Tom Brady,
That's going to be a fun matchup.
Ryan Tannehill, and Matthew Ryan.
All right. So obviously we have 9 QB1 overall type, or QB1 and QB1 overall type guys. So there's 3 that potentially, if you're just in a 12-team league, there's 5 that are not in the QB1 conversation, because Week 7's got not exciting matchups. So as we go through and rank them, you're seeing the type of quality right now with Matt Ryan as a QB1. Not been terrible, but definitely not one of those guys that you're super excited about throwing him in your lineup if you on a week-to-week basis anymore. I guess the question would be is, as we move down these tiers and we get to QB2 flex sleepers, who to flex in or who to put in and hope to get a kind of a boom play out of. If I need a big ceiling, who do I go for? Kraig, who's somebody you think could slide into the QB1 tier looking back at Week 7 if you had to guess?
I could certainly see Carson Wentz getting up there. They're facing San Francisco, and I don't think he'd be a top end. Talking about the back end of the QB1, the San Francisco secondary is nothing special right now, and their defensive line has had a lot of changes. They have 1 or 2 decent sort of linebackers. So their defense is all right. It's just not what people have come to expect of them. So I do think he has an opportunity. Tua going against Atlanta, I know a lot of people are down on him, but if we're talking fantasy-wise, Atlanta has let people score on him this year. He has a nice weapon, so I could certainly see that. And then I do like Jameis Winston going against Seattle. Seattle has let people score against him this year, and when Jameis Winston is going to be getting touchdowns, he's had games where he's gotten a ton of them. If they do more of a rushing attack game, we've seen it may not happen. So he's been hit or miss just based on how they're running their offense that particular game. But coming out of the bye, I think they're going to start showing some stuff, and he's the clear guy there with the issues that Taysom Hill's been having with injury. So,
well, and Tua, from a fantasy perspective, was fine last week. He was definitely a very solid quarterback play, even with coming back from the rib injury. And the ribs are sore this week, but he looks on track to be good to go this week again. So I would agree. Who is our QB2 tier? This is a compile rankings.
Compilation. This is not my rankings.
Thursday night showdown, Denver and Cleveland. That could be an ugly match. Case Keenum, being a guy who knows Stefanski's system, could be a fun kind of sneaky play if you need quarterback help. What do you make of this group of QB2s?
There's a lot of talent and a lot of uncertainty and just some bad matchups. Sam Darnold hasn't been showing what he did earlier in the season. I do like the Giants secondary a lot. Now they aren't getting a ton of pressure, which will be interesting with the Carolina offensive line. So do I think he has a rebound game? Don't. Based on even head coach Matt Rule saying they want to be establishing the run more, and it feels like he's seeing the same thing a lot of us are with Sam Darnold, that hot start isn't continuing. So I'd have him lower. Derek Carr potentially could, we're talking through it, be in that QB1 conversation. I think it's a good matchup. Philadelphia has allowed passing points largely through the tight end and running back position. Last week we saw Kenyon Drake have a good game for the Raiders. And of course, they have Darren Waller, who would talk about allowing points to a tight end. There's a huge opportunity there. So I think he has a good matchup. And Daniel Jones, I don't like the matchup for him either. I know that secondary is not completely healthy for going against Carolina, but he has a banged up receiving core. He just hasn't looked great, and I know he has some rushing upside, but him going against that defense, I'm not excited for personally.
Well, on a banged up O-line and still trying to bounce back from getting his belt clocked. I mean, there's a lot that goes into Daniel Jones. As much as I am starting him in leagues where you're just forced to, yeah, you're not super excited about it. Definitely in this tier of guys, I could see Carr, Burrow, and Wentz pushing into the QB1 conversation by the end of the weekend. Tua, Jameis have potential too. So there's some really interesting QB2s that could be QB1s when things are all said and done. But who is in our flex? So it sounds like Teddy's going to play, at least last report I had read. On the San Francisco side of things, no idea who's going to play because both of them are trying to bounce back from injury. So just keep an eye out. If you're hurting at quarterback and Thursday night and you have to pick a guy to play, put Teddy in and hope that it works. And if not, I do apologize in advance.
Well, we should know which one of them it's going to be, which is the good thing ahead of time for that game.
Mhm.
So if you have to pick one of the two, if you're holding on to one, if you're holding on to both, we're going to find out who's playing of the two or who's starting. So you should be able to drop the other one if you happen to have both for another roster spot. And I don't know that you're necessarily dropping Trey Lance if it's redraft and they think Jimmy's going to be healthy, maybe. But if you're in a league where Jimmy is potentially one of your week in, week out starters, it probably makes sense to keep Trey Lance on the bench in case something happens if you're really having to count on a guy like that.
What's the sleeper tier? You're going to see guys on bye week. You're also going to see guys that we don't think are really even worth playing this week. So keep that in mind. If you see anybody at the bottom that we don't have up here, they're on bye because there are quite a few buys. So our sleeper tier is a lot of what if. What if Detroit blocks a little bit and Jared Goff decides to take some shots down the field? They'll probably get picked off by Jalen. What if Zach Wilson continues to develop like he's been doing? Because he's had a couple of nice games, but he's also had some stinkers. What if Justin Fields takes the next step? That's why they're sleepers. Is there anything you need to add to this group of sleepers? Any thoughts you had on these guys, Kraig?
If they decide to open up that offense for Justin, certainly going against Tampa, who's allowed passing points, there's that opportunity, but they still have a nice pass rush. Chicago's offensive line isn't great, and we know they're probably not going to be able to run very much at all. So the sleeper part of it is how much are they going to open up that offense and let him have that opportunity to try throwing the ball downfield more. Zach Wilson played New England once already, and it went badly. And I doubt that Belichick wants to get shown up a second time, and I'm expecting similar results, which is just why, New England's not an amazing defense, but they showed what they can do against this Jets offense, and it wasn't exciting. Jared Goff, sorry, I have no interest. He could put up points because they're going to have to throw, I think, to have a chance to keep up with the Rams. And that organization, being Detroit, I don't think wants to get shown up by Matt Stafford. They're going to be putting off that hard effort that they have been. And Davis Mills, flip a coin on how he's done week to week. Arizona has allowed some passing points against them, but it seems like Mills every other week doing poorly and then doing all right. And maybe this is one of his on weeks, but I don't think you can really expect it at this point, which is why he's a sleeper for me too.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to trust. And when you need production, especially in a bye week like this, you don't want to just put that chance for sure. All right, so that's it, people. These are all of our QB tiers for week 7.